Onychonycterus specuncola is one of the few omnivores I've seen on the island. They seem to live primarily off the mushrooms and moss within the caves, but they attack almost any non-insect on sight. They avoid Titanoboa whenever possible, which leads me to believe the snake to be a natural predator of Onychonycterus. While flying in the dark caves would be difficult for any creature, Onychonycterus' ability to use echolocation has allowed it to adapt perfectly. It can be found idly flying around the caves, as often as it can be found hanging from bits of the cave ceilings. Not large enough to be used as mounts, and not strong enough to carry much, Onychonycterus still functions well as a guard animal. Whether protecting a vacant home or members of a tribe, their relatively vicious nature has its uses. Moschop cebu mutante in the wild is a lazy, cowardly creature that typically lives in the island's forests, primarily making its home among the great redwoods of the western regions. It survives by being extremely flexible in its eating habits and completely averse to fighting. It never starves, since it can eat just about anything. It runs at the slightest provocation, but is still often preyed upon. What makes Moschops particularly interesting is what it can be trained to do with its eating habits. With a versatile palate and tough teeth, Moschops can be tamed for a unique ability. Over time, it can be accurately taught exactly which things to gnaw, increasing the likelihood of harvesting the specific resource its master desires. For example, teach it to prioritize chewing prime meat, and prime meat will be easier to harvest from the flesh it consumes. Likewise for rare plants materials, and so forth. Just don't expect Moschops to protect you though. Even after taming, it will quickly flee when enemies are nearby. Regardless of being fed well, increasing its strength, or how much affection you shower on it, Moschops retains its inherent cowardly nature. Its lack of combat might deter the use of this companion, but the ability to ride Moschops while making use of its diverse harvesting is a rare treat.
These tribal negotiations give me a headache every time. The Black Thumbs are mad that the Painted Sharks sunk 2 of their barges, but the Painted Sharks say that the barges were too close to Southern Haven, and they were perfectly within their rights to sink them, as per the Southern Isle Accords. Typically, neither side is willing to budge. What a bother. I'd just as soon mind-wipe the lot of them and return to my studies. Alas, such is the fate of the island's most respected neutral entity. At least the Painted Sharks brought some fresh fish. Perhaps I'll side with them.
One of the stranger creatures in the waters surrounding the island is Basilosaurus salatium facet. It's a powerful swimmer, which is adapted to the shallows so remarkably well that it rapidly recovers from injuries when near the water's surface. Conversely, it's vulnerable to deep water pressure, which slowly causes it harm. Basilosaurus is usually closely followed by other predatory creatures, as its eating habits leave plenty of scraps for scavengers to consume. It is a gentle creature towards humans and happily laps up food directly from them. However, the creatures that trail the Basi tend to become dangerously enraged whenever this occurs, as it leaves no leftovers for them. Despite the hassle of engaging with its ornery followers, many tribes still attempt to tame the Basilosaurus, as its mammalian, warm-blooded circulation provides a rider with perfect comfort from both heat and cold. Being apprehensive in nature, Basilosaurus is equipped with a defense mechanism that prevents it from being stunned or shocked. Alternatively, Basilosaurus is hunted, perhaps too vigorously, for its special blubber, which can be efficiently refined into gasoline. Microraptor narrolongus is one of the smallest non-avian dinosaurs on the island. Incredibly fast for its size, Microraptor is a voracious carnivore. Aggressive towards anything regardless of size, Microraptor fancies itself an apex predator. It will attack humans on sight, especially if it's not alone. When hunting, Microraptor's speed is only one of its assets. While not quite capable of sustained flight, its wings allow it to stay aloft for several seconds while jumping. This allows Microraptor to attack its prey's vulnerable areas, as well as search for small river fish. Notable, the creature also tends to use this ability to knock oblivious humans off of their mounts. While not a powerhouse against armed enemies, Microraptor is particularly suited to dismounting enemy riders. Microraptors' natural tendency to attack weaker creatures means they can ignore the mount while attacking the rider with leaps of fury. Well, this seals it. Just when I thought I'd made some sense of the notes I took while visiting the painted sharks, I spotted the nail in the proverbial coffin. Roos. A whole herd of giant roos were just hopping about the countryside like they'd always been there. As much as I love roos, they just shouldn't be here. Period. They evolved in Oz and Oz only, 60 million years after the dinosaurs went extinct, among a bevy of other marsupials. If I know any genus, it's this one, and Prosoptodon should not exist here. This island isn't an ecosystem, it's a zoo. Oviraptor philodontor is a small to medium-sized carnivore, common in the jungles and beaches of the island. Despite being a carnivore, Oviraptor's main source of food is eggs, which it steals from nests. Unlike any other creature, Oviraptor seems to be able to surreptitiously steal these eggs, usually without attracting the attention of an irate mother. In an incredible feat of natural selection, Oviraptor seems to emit a chemical pheromone that affects many creatures as an aphrodisiac. Mated creatures are much more likely to create new eggs while Oviraptor is around, which allows the Oviraptor to go about its business unperturbed. Too small to fight or ride, Oviraptor is still one of the more commonly tamed creatures on the island. Its pheromone ensures an increased stream of eggs from nearby mated wild creatures for breeding, eating, or cooking kibble. Oviraptor will autonomously do the dirty work of stealing eggs from other tribes or wild dinos on your behalf, without attracting unwanted attention. They also make quite adorable sounds, so many children simply like to keep them around as rather strange companions. Raphis replicare, more commonly known as the dodo bird, is quite possibly the dumbest creature I've ever seen in my life. It wanders around the beaches of the island, pecking berries off bushes and being eaten by all manner of carnivore. Without the dodo, the whole island's food chain would disintegrate. This subspecies of the dodo has developed an unbelievably clever way to sustain itself. They mate constantly. I'm fairly convinced that they reach full maturity within a week of being born. This is the only trait keeping them populous on the island. While it can be done, there is almost no reason to domesticate a Raphis replicare. It cannot carry enough to be a beast of burden, it does not provide much food, and it's too stupid to show companionship. It could work as a last-ditch food source, though, so I suppose keeping some around for lean times has a certain logic. Of the many creatures I've yet encountered on the island, the Iguanodon vicissitudinus has the distinctly versatile capability of switching its primary method of locomotion according to its momentary needs. Primarily a rather lethargic bipedal herbivore native to the island's many grasslands and forests, in situations where increased speed or maneuverability is called for, it will quickly shift its posture into quadrupedal stance and behave like a very different creature. While bipedal, it can employ rapid stabbing attacks with its distinctive thumb spikes. In quadrupedal stance, conversely, it seems to have an endless supply of stamina, even while sprinting. Interestingly, the iguanodon's thumb spikes also provide it with the capability to pick seeds out of fruits, allowing a farmer to easily convert stacks of fruits into stacks of seed for planting. Combined with its highly effective fruit harvesting and substantial carry weight, the iguanodon's excellent mobility in bipedal stance makes it an ideal field hand that can also pull off a quick getaway or an agile defense when needed.
After many days of scouring the island upon Archimedes and many more fruitless conversations with the witless, savage sods that seem to make up most of this island's population, I have finally found the spelunkers I need. A tribe to the northwest called the Iron Brotherhood has apparently found 3 artifacts themselves, and it's clear that said relics share an origin with my own. In exchange for my artifact, the Brotherhood agreed to report any findings to me straight away as they continue their search. What stupendously good fortune! Now I can return to my alchemical studies with renewed vigor, while they crawl through the island's caverns in my stead. Brilliant!
Smilodon brutalis is a solitary hunter, generally found in cold, lightly wooded areas. The island's mountains are the perfect habitat, as the mammal's fur keeps it safe from the bitter temperature. While its huge fangs are excellent for delivering death blows, the creature's claws can be just as deadly. Despite normally being a solitary creature, Smilodon brutalis are not opposed to hunting in small packs. In fact, they have to do this to take down larger prey, such as mammoths. Enough saber-tooths can take down a Carnotaurus, perhaps even a Tyrannosaurus. Either way, Smilodon brutalis should not be underestimated. While not as fast as raptors, there's no denying the saber-tooth's increased resilience and power. In addition, well-trained saber-tooth can be taught to use their claws to flay corpses. This may sound morbid, but it is among the best ways to quickly gather large quantities of hide from the giant beasts of the island. Leopleurodon magicus is a mid-sized ocean creature, typically between 20 and 25 feet long. I've yet to directly encounter one myself, but from the tales other tribes have shared, it compares to no other on the island. The rumours indicate that this beautiful creature has magical properties. However, the sightings are so rare, it's hard to decipher old tribes' tales from the underlying truth. They say that Leopleurodon is an elusive creature that can harness its magical powers to retreat from predators or aggressors of any kind. But the beekeeping tribes claim that their honey is so sweet that not even the Leopleurodon could resist. Leopleurodon is rumoured to bring good fortune to those adventurous enough to tame it. With the Leopleurodon by their side, tribes have apparently managed to obtain treasure beyond their wildest dreams. Supposedly, while Kentrosaurus aethiopicus is considerably smaller than its close relative, Stegosaurus regium, it is much more formidable in matters of self-defense. In fact, it is arguably the pound-for-pound champion of not only the Stegosaurus, but when encountered in close-knit fighting packs, ranks atop the island's herbivorous dinosaurs in general. Thanks to its wickedly sharp defensive spikes, any creature that attacks Kentrosaurus is likely to be reversely wounded in turn. Pachyrhinosaurus midisora is a medium-sized herbivore, found almost everywhere but the island's mountains. It is generally calm and ignores all other nearby creatures unless it is attacked. Pachyrhinosaurus possesses a particularly unique survival skill. When threatened, its massive nasal boss releases a chemical into the air that calms other nearby creatures, making them less likely to attack. Megatherium formipava is one of the larger mammals on the island. This is most shocking because it is essentially a giant sloth, if you crossbred it with an elephant and a bear. Because of its size and girth, the Megatherium is uncommonly resistant to being knocked unconscious. Despite primarily being a herbivore, a typical Megatherium is very intent on consuming the island's many insects. It is particularly adept at removing their insides without damaging much of the shell, maximizing extraction of chitin. The otherwise slow and peaceful Megatherium becomes faster and aggressive in the presence of these creatures. Megatherium is an incredibly useful creature to tame, so long as you don't intend to fight other tribes. Its enormity, high resistance to torpor, and voracious attitude toward insects and arachnids makes it ideal for farming large quantities of chitin from the bugs of the island, or simply defending against them. The Eutyrannus saevis is believed to be related to the Tyrannosaurus rex, but it is noticeably different upon first glance. Feathered creatures are not necessarily viewed as dangerous predators in the same light as other theropods. However, the Eutyrannus strikes fear into even the island's most skilled hunters. There are few wild predators that are able to pack hunt alongside the generally hostile Carnotaurus, like the Eutyrannus does, with such ease. It is also the only creature I've seen to consistently induce a state of panic in opponents with its roar. Upon hearing it, most creatures in the area will flee for safety. A domesticated Eutyrannus can be a powerful offensive or defensive addition to war parties. With its mighty roar, it can induce fear in opposing creatures. Meanwhile, Eutyrannus can be trained to develop a confidence-boosting battle cry, which counteracts enemy attempts to induce fear, while also bolstering the resolve of allies, and may even draw wild Carnotaurus to its aid. These unique leadership qualities make the Eutyrannus a versatile and, at times, a necessary creature to have on your side during large-scale confrontations. Leadsichthys conviviumbrosia is probably the largest fish in the waters around the island. Its meat is also extremely succulent, a surprise given its size. It is often traded with the same value as prime meat, and colloquially called prime fish. Of course, not all Leadsichthys meat is this high quality, but most of it is. While the demand for Leadsichthys meat is high, the fish is notoriously difficult to track and hunt. Between its large size, powerful attacks, incredible speed when it turns to flee, and humankind's general ineptitude on open water, actually killing a Leadsichthys is one of the island's more difficult tasks. The hunt for an extremely elusive breed of the fish, the fabled great albino Leadsichthys, has been known to drive otherwise sensible men and women mad with obsession. As if all evil were visibly personified, Utah Raptor Prime is an incredibly aggressive subspecies of Utah raptor found on the island. It tends to travel in small hunting packs, attacking smaller prey with its sharp teeth and enlarged foreclaws. When hunting in packs, the pack leader can vocalize a signal that acts as a battle cry. Be prepared to run or fight if you hear the call of the Utah Raptor. The pack will repeat the calls and attack with much greater intensity. One of the faster creatures on the island, Utah Raptor often from afar. It's hard to believe that Quetzalcoatlus is one of the largest avians on the island. It shares a similar silhouette with the pteranodon and nests near the absolute highest peaks. Upon closer inspection, though, Quetzalcoatlus is an enormous creature of tremendous power.
Once your fall is complete, stay close to the sanctuaries. Within them, small pockets of life still flourish in an otherwise barren garden. Beyond their spheres of influence, you will find an endless sea of decay, ruled by shadows and death. The first of these sanctuaries is the Great City. Though it is no longer a metropolis, a jungle blooms in its place, and you may find a modicum of shelter within its crumbling walls. The others will be more familiar to you, if only for the towers you'll find at their center. Those are the source of their power, the obelisks. They are not quite the same as the ones you're familiar with, not quite as advanced, but that's to be expected. They're an older model, precursors, or more aptly, prototypes.
am perplexed. Even with an expanded number of test subjects, I just cannot find the passion that I once had for my research. I truly thought that my recent adventure had lit a fire in my belly, but I constantly find myself losing focus. Confound it all. Perhaps said adventure itself is the problem. Thinking about it, I am always eager to discuss the obelisks and the artifacts I found with my assistants, even when I'm not in the mood for research. There is a certain allure to them that I cannot describe, something that causes my thoughts to drift in their direction, like the pull of a strong tide. But it could simply be a passing fancy. I must give myself more time.
I never thought this island was normal exactly. I mean, there are giant obelisks floating in the sky for Pete's sake. Not to mention that cave I found, which hid a platform similar to those found at the base of said obelisks. Well, similar, except for those oddly shaped holes that were carved into its podium. I guess I just didn't care about all that. So long as I had my beautiful, unique, and untainted ecosystem to study, I was happy. But now... no, I shouldn't write it off just yet. Not before I arrive at Rockwell's. There's still a chance that my data is off, or that I missed something obvious. I won't give up on my paradise just yet.
The latest Broth of Enlightenment trials have concluded, and as expected, I am disappointed in the results. Though the primates I tested it on showed increased aptitude for learning, I do not believe any of them have truly ascended to a higher level of intelligence. Well, bugger the little blighters, I say. My assistants have almost finished preparing my supplies for my next expedition, and I have drafted a letter to send to the Iron Brotherhood ahead of my departure. Soon enough, I'll have forgotten all about them. Pardon the interruption, it seems that I have a guest. Now, just what is Mr. Nerva doing here? I suppose I'll find out.
Coelodonta utilicero is a friendly herbivore, common to the tundra and grassland regions of the island. It is a large and dangerous creature, though it seems fairly trusting of the fauna around it. Once attacked, Coelodonta begins charging towards its foe. It builds up momentum as it charges, and depending on its ultimate impact speed, the results can be terrifying. With enough room to charge, it can even skewer the largest creatures in just one gore. Despite how powerful Coelodonta are, many tribes still hunt them extensively due to their unique resources. Its horns can ground into a highly arousing powder, and its thick fur can support many insulating outfits, making the Coelodonta in high demand. Even less advanced tribes use packs to hunt them down, though at significant peril. When not being hunted for its horns, Coelodonta makes an impressive beast of burden. Its ability to take on far larger opponents, provided sufficient charging room, as well as its sizable load capacity, make it a solid addition to any trader party or gathering expedition.
Well, I think I've gotten as far in my studies of the obelisks as my archaeological expertise will take me. A shame, really. This has been such a joyous little diversion that I hate to see it end. Oh, Rockwell, you old twit. You've forgotten the origins of this little excursion. Spelunking. Did you yourself not hypothesize that there may be more artifacts hidden elsewhere on this island? Surely you can't give up before confirming that. No, certainly not. Nor can I be expected to scour the Ark's corners alone. Perhaps someone can spell in my stead. Better yet, perhaps someone has already spelunked.
Parasaurolophus amphibio has one of the more interesting adaptations of any creature I've seen on the island. Like all parasaur, it has a signature crest on its head. Very docile at first, I've been able to approach the creature without disturbing it. If startled, however, the creature can vocalize a distress call to the surrounding area that warns of danger. Parasaurolophus appears to be low on the food chain and is hunted by everything, creatures and humans alike. which explains its skittish nature. It is a good source of meat and hide, if you can manage to keep up with it long enough to kill it. Despite being what most tribes consider a relatively useless creature to tame, I once met an interesting woman who had tamed an entire herd of them. She informed me that many overlooked the creature's potential. She even graciously gifted me a fancy saddle to put on my own Parasaurolophus one day. As a relatively simple creature to domesticate, Parasaurolophus is commonly one of the first mounts a tribe will be able to acquire. Its ability to run relatively fast for lengthy intervals makes it a solid mode of medium-range transportation, though it has almost no ability to defend itself or its rider in a traditional sense. Smaller creatures, however, appear to be frightened by the horn of Parasaurolophus, although it doesn't do much damage. It also has decent weight-bearing capabilities, which could prove useful for nomadic tribes as they work to establish a presence on the island.
I have always tried to maintain a strict neutrality when it comes to tribal matters, but then again, I have never had an offer this tempting from someone as respectable as Mr. Nerva. Not only has he offered to provide me with test subjects, but he has also expressed a mutual interest in investigating the obelisks. All he asks from me is that I provide him with reliable counsel. I would trust few tribes to be able to make good on such promises, but Mr. Nerva's new legion is perhaps the most powerful tribe on the island. Indeed, if they maintain their current trajectory, they may be the only powerful tribe on the island. His offer is worth considering, at the very least.
Larger ancestor of water birds like the stork or pelican, Pelagornis myocenis shares many traits with its modern-day brethren. However, it seems to spend far more time hunting for fish over the open deep sea. In fact, I have rarely spotted a wild Pelagornis anywhere near the coasts of the main island, as it prefers to rest its wings by paddling on the ocean's surface rather than waddling along the island's beaches. Perhaps this behaviour is a result of its survival instincts. The early Miocene was a post-dinosaur epoch after all, and Pelagornis would not be accustomed to such predators. Considering how quickly it flees from humans, one can hardly blame its caution. Because of its ability to fly, walk, and surface swim, a tamed Pelagornis is one of the island's most versatile mounts. But this comes at a cost. The same webbed feet that allow Pelagornis to serenely maneuver along the ocean's surface prevent it from carrying prey off the ground, which may limit its appeal to some survivors. Phiomia ignavis is another of the island's generally docile herd animals. They are small enough that almost any predator can bring them down, but large enough to provide plenty of meat. Were it not for the protection of the herd and their instinct to run from any predator, these would almost certainly be hunted to extinction. Phiomia's tusks and trunk make it especially suited to scavenging plant life from the ground. It uses its tusks to dig up loose plant life, then uses its stubby trunk to scoop the foliage into its mouth. Adult Phiomia often dig up food for their young, and watching a baby Phiomia attempt to use its trunk can be quite amusing. While it is completely possible to ride a Phiomia around, they are a meagre choice. They work very well, however, as pack mules. If you feed the Phiomia a stimberry, it serves as a laxative in the creature's digestive system. Knowing this, tribal communities often keep a herd of these as livestock to produce mass quantities of fertilizer.
am starting to become quite cross with Mr. Nerva's impatience. I had barely any time at all to study the obelisk before we set out again, this time to that cave Miss Walker mentioned. I wonder, does he believe that she knows more about the obelisks than I do? Nonsense! Any fool could see that I am the superior scientist. Besides, I am his official advisor while she is his prisoner. She isn't even privy to my presence. Nonetheless, I feel compelled to prove my scientific mettle. Whatever is in that cave, I shall be the one to discover its purpose. The mysteries of the obelisks are mine to uncover, not Miss Walker's or even Mr. Nerva's. Mine.
Among the island's swamp-based threats, Sarcosuchus excubitor is a lot like what you might expect from a giant crocodile, a patient killing machine. It spends much of its days lazily waiting in the water for prey to walk near. That said, it is not opposed to scurrying onto land and pressing the issue when hungry. A good tactic for escaping many predators is to jump into the water, as most are slow swimmers. This is a bad tactic for escaping a Sarcosuchus, obviously, as they are actually faster in the water than they are on land. Whether in land or water, it utilizes a well-rounded arsenal of attacks to display its prowess as a hunter. If it desires to grab a predator and spin into a death roll, quickly lunge forward for a surprise attack, or target a foe directly behind it, it is able to do so with extreme ease. Sarcosuchus is a ferocious creature that even causes the fearless piranha to flee at the sight of it. Despite being river-dwelling creatures, Sarcosuchus seem quite at ease in the oceans. More than a few fishing communities use them as mounts, simply to help fight off megalodons, or to gain better access to the resources found within the reefs.